Hey everyone, welcome to a very special episode of Power Move's Young Leaders Network Edition. This episode is special for a couple of reasons. First off, it was the first live on location episode we've recorded. We filmed this at Activate 2024 in Toronto, and I had the chance to sit down with Braden Wheatcroft, owner of Remax Camosun in Victoria, BC. And we had a video crew with us. So we filmed the full interview. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, consider hopping over to the Remax Canada YouTube channel so you can get the full immersive interview experience. But what really made this interview special was the subject matter that we tackled. Earlier this year, Braden had what he described as his greatest mental health challenge of his life. He was at an event, he was about to go on stage, and just before he was about to step in front of the 1,100 people in the audience, he felt his body begin to power down. The blood rushed away from his head, his palms started to get sweaty, his heart raced, and he was having a panic attack. And later, while doing an office presentation, one of his great office meetings that Braden is famous for, he again suffered that feeling of a panic attack. And what followed was what he thought would be a week off to get everything reset, and that led into months of self-discovery and learning a lot more about his own mental health. And what's interesting is Braden has had a lot of conversations with other people in this industry, agents, brokers, and he predicts probably 9 out of 10 people are being impacted by these mental health challenges. So he wanted to get past the stigma. He wanted to put it all on the table, tell his story in the hopes that somebody listening or watching this episode may get some value, may be validated in how they're feeling, and seek the help that they truly need. This episode deals with some heavy stuff. It's a heavy subject matter, and we're going to provide a link in the show note to some mental health resources. If you are feeling some of the things that Braden is describing, I personally encourage you to reach out, get the help that you need, because this is an important topic that I think we need to shed more light on. I hope you enjoy this interview with Braden Wheatcroft. Well, hi there, and welcome to Power Move's Young Leaders Network Edition, where we sit down and chat with some of the best agents and brokers across the country. And as you may be able to tell, all of you who are watching the video form of this is a bit of a different interview. It's our first in-person interview on Power Move's YLN Edition, and it's a special one. I'm sitting here with Braden Wheatcroft, owner of Remax Camosun, based in Victoria, BC. And Braden and I had been talking about doing a podcast for quite some time, discussing different topics we could dive into, and then something happened. Braden had what he described as his greatest mental health challenge of his life, which occurred earlier this year. Is that correct?
I actually called it my Unplanned Unravelling.
Unplanned Unravelling.
That's what the PR team came up with.
And I figured that this would be a great opportunity if Braden was comfortable to dive into this topic, which maybe isn't talked about enough. And so Braden is joining me for that conversation. Braden, welcome to Power Move's YLN Edition.
Thanks, Wade. Appreciate the opportunity.
Why are you doing this? Why did you say yes?
Oh, it's a good question. So, I appreciate in the digital marketing world we live in, and all the social media content we create as realtors and brokers and whatnot, there's always, I think pressure to put out content that's going to reach people. And I think with this particular topic, it was important for me to say this right away off the hop is my singular motivation for being here is to help somebody who might be struggling right now listening to this. We'll get to the part in the story later, but one of the things that it's a gift and a curse. Just ask all of my past teachers. I've never afraid to be the guy who asks questions or pipe up during class, and I'm always an oversharer. Like I've just always been someone who's comfortable sharing with people. And when I was going through this unplanned unraveling, I was just as open in the early days of it as I am today. I know a lot more today about myself and what I was going through and the resources that are out there, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But what was astonishing to me is as I'm having these conversations, whether it's with family or friends or particularly colleagues in the office, I realized that I was certainly not unique. I was not a snowflake when it came to, mental health challenges in this business. And it actually, after having 5 or 6 and then 10 and then 20 conversations with different people, I started feeling really sick to my stomach about how prevalent mental health challenges are in our industry. I don't know what the exact stat is, but they say 1 in 4 people struggle with their mental health. Well, I swear it's 9 out of 10 realtors do. And the one who doesn't is probably lying about it based on what I was hearing from people. And these are people across the entire spectrum of generations, everyone from, really older, millennials to young millennials, even some Gen Z agents, all the way up into the baby boomers, my parents' generation. And it was interesting to hear the similarities and the differences between the experiences in that. So I just felt, if a single person can hear this and perhaps be motivated to take a positive step, even if that step is to just be with what they're going through. That in itself is a step. I just feel a huge responsibility after. I can't unhear all of the stuff that I heard in the early days of this process.
So the unraveling, what happened?
Boy, oh boy, how much time do we have? So I'll try to give you not the fully abridged version, but I think it started in December of 2022. My wife and I often do annual planning and goal setting together. I know, super romantic and sexy. And we were having a conversation, and for whatever particular reason, I said to her, you know what? I feel like 2023 is going to be a breakthrough year for me. And I couldn't really explain why, but I just had the sense that 2023, I had kind of the wind was at my back. I felt like I was having some momentum at work. Just things felt like they were rolling. And so I, try to have a theme for every year. And I decided in advance that 2023 was going to be a breakthrough year. It turned out to be more of a breakdown year, but that was my mindset coming into the year. And so every decision I made, from hiring a social media marketing company to help me, from getting more help around the office, to saying yes to things that I might be too scared to. Oh wow, there's flies in here. To saying yes to things that I normally would maybe be too scared to, because I just made this decision. It's going to be a breakthrough year, and so. It kind of rolled out that way. Like I had a number of opportunities that just came my way, and thankfully with preparation and a little bit of luck, they went well, which led to more opportunities, and that led me to September of 2023 when I got a call from Sue Robbins, who's the president of Richard Robbins International. She's, let's be honest, she's the glue that holds the RRI company together. No disrespect to Rich, but he'd be the first to tell you that. And she said, hey, we've got our fall conference coming up. It's time for you to share whatever on stage. You're due. You're ready. And I had similar opportunities in the past, but I had always declined them. And big part of the reason was I was afraid. Public speaking is scary even for someone who does a lot of it. But I decided, you know what? It's my breakthrough year. This is if the universe is a thing, this is the universe serving up the breakthrough for me. So I said, yes, let's do it. Their signature event, their biggest crowd, let's go. And almost instantly after getting off the phone with Sue, I felt what I would describe almost as static in my head. It's hard to describe it, but it was back in the day when TVs used to have the, it almost kind of felt like that. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Maybe I just didn't feel good that day or whatnot. And that continued on pretty persistently for weeks. And of course, anyone who knows me, I'm kind of a chronic over-preparer. I love preparation. It to me is such an important part of being a professional. And so I prepared harder for that presentation than anything I'd ever done before. And for the first time in my life, I could tell you that a presentation actually it haunted me. It totally consumed me to the point where I was starting to lose sleep. I've always been a good sleeper. I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking about my presentation. I'd be super tired at night, brushing my teeth, getting ready for bed, and I'd start running my lines, and all of a sudden I would get revved up. If I was like, I get off a phone call with someone and I sit back in my chair, it's like my presentation was just sitting there laying like, work on me. And this kept up for basically the 3 months until the conference in November. And it got to a point where they needed me to send in my slides. I had done the presentation 3 or 4 times to some test audiences because that's how much of an over-preparer I am. And it was going well, and I sent off the slides, and I was like, okay, well, I can't tinker anymore, so I just have to show up and do it. And the day of the presentation came around. It was on the second of the 2-day event. I had an okay sleep the night before, but something just felt off the morning, and I was trying to do my best. I was drinking water, keeping my caffeine intake down. I was meditating, using a meditation app, trying to just like settle my nerves. And how their event setup works is you go to the AV table and they mic you up, and then you walk to the front of the room off to the side next to the stage, and you wait there until they read your intro, and then you go on stage. And I had this like staticky feeling in my head. I thought, you know what, I'm going to do some breathing exercises. So I did a technique some people may be familiar with called box breathing, where you breathe 4 counts in, hold for 4, 4 counts out, hold for 4, 4 counts, and you just continue that. And while I was doing that, I'm standing at the side of the stage by myself, and I literally, the best I could describe it is I felt like a computer that was powering down. I physically felt I maybe don't have the best way to describe it. It was like the life force was draining out of my body from the tip of my head all the way down. I've later learned that in panic attack situations like that, it's actually the blood draining from your brain.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that was happening to me minutes before I was supposed to go up on stage. And I remember my palms got really sweaty. My forehead, I started sweating. My heart was racing. My vision actually became blurred. And I felt this life force drain all the way down. Like it literally felt like into my legs, in past my knees, into my shins. And I didn't fall, but I had my hands on my knees, still kind of standing. And the only thing I could think about in that moment was, what would be more embarrassing right now? Collapsing on stage in front of 1,100 people, or running to the AV booth and telling Sue, who I love and adore and want to always deliver for, and telling her I can't do this. And as I was having this little internal debate with myself, I felt the computer come back online. And literally, again, it's so weird, man. I wish I could like describe it in better detail, but like I felt it come up my legs, into my stomach, into my chest, and literally it was back in my head, and I kind of came out of it. I was drenched in sweat, which is, kind of gross. Sorry about that detail. And just at that time, the presentation before me was wrapping up, and they started reading my bio. And I literally took I was wearing this like sweater jacket, and I took the sleeve of my jacket and I wiped off my forehead of the sweat. And then I walked on stage and actually did a pretty damn good job.
Wow.
Which is hard to believe. I wouldn't say it was my best presentation I've ever done, but it's up there. It's in the top couple. And to think that came immediately after having this major meltdown was terrifying, to be honest. It was really, really scary to lose total control of my body. It's like I couldn't think to walk. I couldn't think to stand. I just was on this roller coaster ride going through it. And I don't know that I've ever really experienced anything like that, where I have no control over my faculties, my ability to move. I don't know how long it lasted. If I had to guess, it probably all happened within a minute, maybe 2 minutes. And so, yeah, thankfully, my friend Nathan, who was speaking before, Nathan Dart's one of the best presenters, speakers I've ever seen. And he's so charismatic and so captivating. And he also always finishes late. And thank goodness he did that day, because if I went on at the time I was on the schedule, I would have been in mid meltdown. But Nathan, he was dropping a lot of great value and whatnot. And so he went a little bit late, and I'm so glad that he did, because it saved me.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the first sign that something was not right. But it wasn't the last sign either.
Yeah, so fast forward, because you mentioned that was in 2023.
November 2023.
November 2023. And then this year, early in the year, I know there was a couple other speaking opportunities. So how did that previous experience impact you going into those new opportunities? And what was the big event that was kind of that official unraveling?
So I, at the time, didn't know what had happened in November. I kind of honestly just chalked it up to public speaking anxiety. I mean, 1,100 people, 20 minutes, like that's, the stakes aren't high, but they kind of feel high. And also I really wanted to do right by Rich and Sue by delivering a great presentation. I wanted to make sure the audience got value from it. So I think I put a lot of pressure on myself. And I think that was kind of how I explained it away. I'm like, well, that's obviously what happened. And what was really weird, I forgot to share, was the second my presentation was over, I walked off stage and that static in my head was gone. And I remember actually being pretty pissed off about that, because I had this thought, I'm like, wait a minute, I could have felt this good this whole time. Like, why did I let myself suffer so much, as if I had control over it. But, and then I kind of settled into the Christmas season and everything was pretty fine. I did a welcome at our Christmas party. That was okay. And then I had a opportunity to present to the Lower Mainland broker owners in Harrison Hot Springs in January. So that was my first opportunity to do any presenting after that November incident. And I wouldn't say that I felt nearly as stressed, but I could still kind of tell, like, I was a little worried about what had happened and what if it happens again. And sure enough, I think both of my sessions were either mid-morning or early afternoon. I wasn't right away. Sure enough, as I'm sitting there in the room, it's a much smaller room, maybe 50, 60 people sort of around round tables, I can feel the panic attack starting to set in again. And I had more tools at this point because, of course, I'd researched what was going on. And so people were saying, like, if you feel that blood rushing thing, actually, like, cross your legs, squeeze your body, and it prevents the blood from going into your extremities.
Wow.
And so I was literally, I don't know if anyone noticed, but I was actually sitting there with my legs crossed, hugging myself and watching the presentation going, oh my gosh, I hope this doesn't happen. And I think it was Kingsley who introduced me. And as soon as that happened, I got up and I was a little shaky for about 10 seconds. And then as soon as I got into it, it just went away. The crazy thing is I presented the next day and it happened again the next day. So I don't know what's going on here. Fast forward to a few weeks and I get an email from Steve at Hallmark. Forgive me, I don't have Tabrizi, thank you. Really awesome guy, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I heard you did a presentation at Richard Robbins. Like, could you do that for us? I think it was their AGM in Toronto and potentially in Ottawa." And again, this was me, like, my breakthrough years happened. Like, people are actually reaching out to me to book for presentations based off of seeing a presentation that I've done and wanting to say, like, hey, this was good. I want my people to get that. So, like, awesome, right? And the date he told me on the phone, I knew that I was actually going to be away. I had a prior commitment. And so I was like, oh, Steve, sorry, I can't. I'm busy that week. And then while we're on the phone, he literally goes, oh, no, sorry, it's this week. And I was like, oh. And so I looked at my calendar and I saw nothing but white space. I was available. And as soon as I knew I could say yes, the static came back, the heart rate started racing. And I said yes, because that's what you're supposed to do, I guess. And we hung up, and I felt awful. It was like September, October, November all over again. And now I'm thinking, like, this is a room of people I don't really know. I have to, like, they're going to pay me the state. Like, it's like, this is like, now feels like maybe the minor leagues instead of rec league, right? And so I kind of sat with that discomfort for about a week. The next week at our Wednesday morning sales meeting, which is something we do every week. I've been hosting these meetings for 5 years. Objectively, I'm pretty good at hosting these meetings. and it's in my room, my office, my studio, talking to my team, the people that I know, like, and trust, and etc. And during that sales meeting, I had about 5 panic attacks. And I've watched the tape. You would never know. I wouldn't even know. But I know what was going on during those meetings, and I've watched it pretty closely to go, like, oh, could you see it in my eye? Did the eyes roll back in my head, or did I? No, it's like, no, the exterior, you'd have no idea that it was happening, but it was very real. And
so what do you feel inside in that moment that you know that's a panic attack?
Well, from what I understand, of course, not being a medical expert, but to me, it's about things like your elevated heart rate, sweating, feeling lightheaded, feeling nauseous, it's like anxiety, but like turn the dial right up. It feels like, to me, anxiety feels like it's a thing that's kind of there. It's like a pot that's boiling in the background. Like you can feel that there. But to me, the panic attack feels like an assault. Like it feels like almost violent. Like it's like I can do a lot with my anxiety, but when it's the panic attack, it's like, yeah, you're strapping in and you're going through it.
So you're experiencing that mid-meeting. Sorry,
5
to cut you
times.
off there.
5
times.
Yeah. And so after that, I canceled my afternoon appointments. I went home and I basically didn't leave my house for 2 days, because I was just a wreck, like physically, emotionally, mentally, all of the things. And that was the first week where I decided I'm going to take a break, thinking again, like, ambitious overachiever. I'm going to overcome this mental health crisis, and I'll do it in a week, and I'll decide the timeline in advance. Well, turns out doesn't quite work like that. My wife and I went to this cool Nordic spa where they have like the saunas and the cold plunge and all that. And this is the Sunday after I've had a week, and I've tried to recharge my batteries, and I'm supposed to go to work the next day, and literally I'm having a panic attack in the sauna. And I went into the change room and I texted my business partner, Graham, and I was like, hey man, I don't think I can come in tomorrow. And I hope I get the opportunity to say this early and often throughout this interview, but my business partners were so incredibly kind and supportive, and still are to this day. And Graham's response was like, do what you need to do. Like, we've got this. And my whole team has been like that, which is truly a blessing. So that week turned into two turned into 4, and 4 turned into 6. And lots of stuff I can unpack over that 6-week period if you want me to. But it was just sort of one of those things where I needed to get help, and I don't think that it would have got better if I didn't.
So what did that look like, Kay? So you take this week, you think, okay, 1 week's going to be enough time for me to get through this. As you said, life had other plans.
Yeah.
So what did the next 5-6 weeks look like? Like, what approach did you take?
Well, the first thing I had to do, which was really hard and embarrassing, was I had to email Steve at Hallmark and say, I can't do this. And I think there was about 5 or 6 weeks notice. I maybe had been confirmed for, forgive me if I get the details wrong, but I think I'd been confirmed for a week, but then the unplanned unraveling happened. And of course, being an optimist, I was like, oh, I'll be fine in time. And then, that was one of the, I'd say, tough love things for my business partner, where they're like, we support you in whatever you choose to do, but that might be a good thing to let go of. And so I emailed Steve and said kind of what was going on, and I'm so sorry that I can't follow through on this commitment. It breaks my heart to put you in this position. And of course, him and his team were incredibly gracious and understanding. And but I can only say that's probably one of the most embarrassing emails I've sent in a really, really long time. Just having to kind of tail between my legs, say like, I'm sorry, I can't do this. But they were great about it. Even checked in with me a couple times throughout the last year just to see how I'm doing, which is cool. And so that I kind of uncoupled everything from work, and I just decided that I would try to focus on how can I get better. And anyone who knows me or is a coaching client or follows me online knows that one of my sort of frameworks for life is a Stoic framework, which is everything kind of organizes into one of two buckets. Bucket one is things you can control, and bucket two is things you can't. And what I found is there's a heck of a lot more in the second bucket than in the first one. So I just kind of went back to what can I control? I can control my diet. I can control my, how attempting to get the right amount of sleep. I can control what I can, who I can talk to, what professionals I can see. And so within a pretty short amount of time, I scaled up from not really having anyone that I see for self-care to having a therapist that I see weekly, having an occupational therapist, which is she specializes in stress management through meditation and breath work. And I started seeing a naturopath, an acupuncturist, a massage therapist. I go to chiro. And so, the joke around the house is I was a shaman away from a self-care softball team, because I literally had like 7 or 8 people that I was seeing either weekly or bi-weekly or whatnot. It was expensive, I'm not going to lie, but at the same time, it felt like I couldn't afford not to figure it out.
So is that something that is now just built into how you will go about life in the future? Like, this wasn't something where it's like, okay, I had these sessions, I'm fixed now, I'm all better.
Yeah.
Is this now a lifelong approach for you?
I'm hesitant to commit to something that I may not follow through with. I can tell you what my intentions are right now, which is to absolutely make it part of the self-care system, if you will. It's one of those funny things. It's not as if I didn't see value in that type of help before, but it wasn't until I was brought to my knees and literally at times couldn't even turn on my own TV, let alone try to run a real estate company, where I was like, I need to get help. And so, I think the idea of maintenance and whatnot, I mean, even with my therapist, we made some really great progress together, going weekly for probably about 4 months. And even just as recent as my last session, we agreed to roll it to bi-weekly because of the progress. But I can't imagine ever stopping. And that goes with all of the other ones. I just won't be frequenting them quite as much, but I don't think I need it as much, which is really key.
What I think is cool is that your management and ownership team understood, or at least seek to understand, and were very good about it, made it easy for you to be able to go and get that. And even Steve as well being all right with that. I would imagine that as news gets out, because agents are probably like, where's Braden? Why haven't we seen him on these office meetings? You probably had to jump into some of these conversations. What was the reaction like from agents when you were having those conversations? What did you learn?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because you're right. My team, the management team, staff, owners, all that, were incredibly supportive. Rich and Sue, RRI, very supportive. So that was all great, sort of on the work front. But the agents were also so incredibly kind and generous, like people offering to go for a walk with me, people saying if I ever want to chat. And it was those conversations that honestly that was very enlightening to me, because the amount of people who said they either right now, present tense, struggle with anxiety on the daily basis, are struggling with depression, are struggling with panic attacks or these different things. And if they're not doing it now, a lot of people even said to me they used to, or that used to be a thing in their life. And it was just, I try not to, I like to joke around. I like to use a sense of humor as a way, one of my Toastmaster mentors taught me that if people are laughing, it means they're listening. So I always try to incorporate humor in everything I do. So I try, and I'm trying not to be disrespectful by using humor on a heavy topic, but when I say 9 out of 10 realtors are struggling with mental health and the one who isn't is lying, that's actually what the math felt like, honestly. And it's because of that, I just thought, wow, I can't jump on a public platform like this right now, because I need to, it's one of my issues is the savior syndrome. I want to save everybody. I needed to save myself. But once I knew I had my feet under me, I felt a really strong responsibility to use my, shameless self-promotion and public-facing image to talk about this. And by no means do I want to say for a second that these mental health challenges, this isn't a gender thing, but I just want to specifically underline the amount of men who I shared with them my struggle, and they shared with me, and I, I don't want to assume I'm the only person they've ever told, but like that was kind of the vibe of a lot of those conversations. It's like, almost like I was giving them permission to share what had been going on for them. And so that also I think is a huge thing. And I don't want to take this down the men's health path, but it's something I have to point out because it was so obvious when I was having those conversations.
What are some of the tangible tools that you took away that you learned over that time that you were taking for yourself of how to deal with like when that stress starts emerging, or perhaps things to avoid so it doesn't start in the first place? What were some of the takeaways that maybe somebody listening to this or watching this episode could actually implement?
Well, man, it's a work in progress still. I still struggle with having, panic attacks, not to the same degree. I still have anxiety. I haven't got a chance in the interview to say this yet, but one of the tools that I decided to use was medication. And I forgot to bring it. I was going to bring my bottle of antidepressants and put them on the counter and be like, what now, people? Because there's like, again, a little dark humor, but like being a depressed motivational speaker is kind of hilarious if you think about it. But maybe that's my future in comedy, because I think all comics are also depressed apparently. But I decided to take medication, and I feel like between that and therapy specifically, those tools really, really helped me and continue to help me.
So today was a big day. We're here at Activate. You got a call leading into it that you would actually be stepping back on stage, which to my understanding is the first time since this Unravelling event that happened earlier in the year. How did that go? How did you feel today? How do you feel even doing something like this where you're opening it up and telling your story in a public platform?
Yeah, like literally the presentation was like a couple hours ago, so I still think I'm kind of processing it. I would say that it felt really good. I think ever since the first issue in November in 2023, there's this like, I couldn't tell if that was a like paying your dues experience that I had to do. Like, oh yeah, no, everyone on their first big presentation has, flop sweat and an elevated heart rate. Or like, oh, am I just the guy who faints all the time? Like I didn't know which one it was. So I like the narrative more that it was just a one-time occurrence. But then in the Harrison Hot Spring things, it happened again and again. And so I think there's always that anticipatory anxiety part of like, is this going to happen again? Is this just me now? Am I just the guy who panics before he presents? And that may very well be the case. But one of the things that I learned specifically with my therapist, in fact, actually, this is kind of funny. This presentation that we did today, I got booked Friday. So we're recording this on Tuesday. Yeah. It was Friday at like 3 or 4 p.m. my time when we got booked, because there was some last minute changes to the schedule. And so I didn't have a lot of time to over prepare or think about it. I only had like 3 days notice to do an hour-long thing for 50 of my peers. And so what I learned, because I am a bit of a yes guy and I like opportunities and exciting stuff. When I got first asked, I said, you know what? Let me think about it, which me 2 years ago, I would have said, hell yeah, let's go. Whereas now I'm a little bit more like, I think self-aware, maybe a bit more self-compassionate of going like, is this actually good for me? And I kid you not, I called my therapist and scheduled not really an emergency call, but like, I'm like, if you have any time to chat with me today, I want to talk to you about this before I say yes to it. And so she was a miracle worker, fit me in her schedule. And I was actually shocked. I thought she'd say, no, this is too big, too soon. Don't do it. It was the opposite. She was very, very supportive, and really kind of laid it out for me. Like, listen, this panic and anxiety, it's kind of like I think she described it as a saber-toothed tiger. It's like, if you run away from it, it's going to chase you. And the faster you run, the faster it's going to be. And so it's not so much like fight it as much as it is be with it. And so that's, I'm not going to lie, is really, really hard, because when you feel unpleasant or uncomfortable feelings, I think any rational person would want to do things to either avoid them or overcome them. But this idea of like being with it, by no means have I mastered the art of that, but I thought about that. And today, I woke up feeling pretty good. About half an hour before the presentation, I was feeling like for me, the canary in the coal mine is always, and I'm sorry for anyone who's shaking my hand today, is sweaty palms. Like that's like the first sign of, this something's about to happen. And then sometimes it just stops there. It's nothing more than that. And other times then it's the dizziness or the whatever. And so I was starting to get the sweaty palms going, oh boy, here we go. Okay, well, don't run from the saber-toothed tiger, but don't fight it either. And I happy to say that like it didn't escalate beyond that. And as soon as the presentation started, I felt great. And so, I don't want to again proclaim that like, hey, I'm back. Let's fill up my calendar with presentations. But I definitely believe today was a really, really positive step in the right direction for me. And to your question about something like this, I don't know what the difference is, and maybe it is public speaking. I don't know, but this feels like totally cool and safe, and I don't feel stressed about this at all.
One of my biggest goals for having this conversation as well is based on your math. 9 out of 10 agents or 10 out of 10 agents are probably having some form of this in their lives, right? Mm-hmm. It's a crazy hectic job. There's high expectations. The emotional part of this business, considering that it's clients' biggest purchase, biggest financial decision they'll ever make, that's a lot of weight on all of our great agents' shoulders. I know for you, and I want to bring this up because I think it's important, during your journey, there were probably peaks and valleys, and there were some really tough times as well. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about kind of the toughest time that you had and how you got through that?
For sure. You're really teeing me up for this one, hey?
Yeah.
So the decision to get onto medication wasn't an immediate one. When I first sat down with my therapist, based on everything that was going on, she in her terms, she's done this to me a few times. She's like planted the seed with things. And so I feel like she's trying to not put me on the spot right there and say like, you should go on medication, yes or no. It's more like just planting the seeds, if your symptoms don't get better over a certain period of time, like maybe this will be something to consider. And I was like, okay, yeah. Like, but my ego was not ready to do that. Cause I, at the time I'm 36 years old. I've never really been on a prescription drug in my life. Like drugs are great. And the pharmaceutical industry, the things it's done for people, awesome. I just don't take medication. I'm just not a guy who does it. Like that's my ego. And so I probably was in therapy for about 6-7 weeks in a row, and we were starting to build what we called my reentry plan. Because at this point, I was pretty much totally out of work. And so I went in on a very forced, deliberate schedule. Like I'm not allowed to work on Saturdays because I usually work 6 days a week. And, I'm not going to stay past a certain time. And at first it was like 4 p.m. And I'm, if in a day where I might have 3 coaching sessions or 3 recruiting sessions of capacity, I'm only allowed to book 1 so that I don't overdo it. So like, I literally felt like I was being bubble wrapped, but it was necessary. And there was this one particular day where I think it might have even been a sales meeting day. I can't remember. But I received this email, and I've reread this email multiple times. And I don't want to get into too much detail because I don't want the person who wrote the email to feel anything if they connect the dots. But what I would say is it was an email from somebody who was upset about operations at the brokerage. That's as far as I'll say. And this was like my first week back. And I now understand what the word triggered feels like. Because I imagine I've been triggered lots before, but like I had this very, very like conscious triggering feeling where literally like even the expression your blood boiling, like I literally felt my blood boiling, and I was so angry and like seeing red, and I had to go to Canada Post to return this Amazon package, and I'm standing in line at Canada Post, and I'm like frothing, like I'm ruminating on this. I'm so freaking mad. How could this person email me? They know what I'm going through. The audacity, the nerve. I'm sick of this business. I just want it all to stop. I'm tired. I just want it to be over. And as I'm sitting there having this like ruminating thought, literally just the word this may sound bizarre, but just the word suicide bubbled up from my unconscious and crossed my mind. And I was like, holy fuck. What? I'm standing in line in Canada Post, and that the thought of not even like thinking about doing it or thinking about like how I would do it or when I would do it or what if, like, I didn't go down any further than I didn't open the door at all. I just saw the name placket on the door and it just said suicide. And I was like, whoa. And literally my stomach dropped through the floor. It actually felt like the entire floor dropped out from under me. And what was weird was I wasn't mad about the email anymore. I was terrified, absolutely terrified that a thought like that would even cross my mind for a second. I have a beautiful life. I have an amazing wife. I have an incredible job. I live in a great country. I'm a healthy person. I have everything going for me. I'm an optimistic person. I'm an enthusiastic, the thought that would ever even enter my mind for even just a second was absolutely terrifying. And it, in that moment, I would say gave me empathy for anybody who has harmed themselves, because I thought to myself, man, and I don't mean to say this like I'm superior or better or whatever, but like, if I could think this, oh man, I can see why anybody could think this, you know? And thankfully my incredible wife, Mandy, she's a registered social worker, and she's actually almost done her master's in therapy, which, by the way, if you're going to have a mental breakdown, I got to tell you, being married to a therapist, I highly recommend it. It's like a running joke with my therapist. I'm like, imagine if I married a banker or like a realtor. Like, I don't know how this would have gone. Like, but no, I have like the most incredible, kind, it's actually our wedding anniversary today.
Happy anniversary.
I love you, Mandy. Please leave that in. That's my only ask.
I'm not cutting any of this.
Okay, that's sweet. So through her social work training, she had to do some suicide and self-harm prevention education. And of course, like, we're always sharing stuff, because I find like what I do in coaching and what she does in therapy, like obviously they're different. Like, for example, she's actually gone to school, whereas I dropped out of school, but there are some similarities. And so I'm always interested in what she's learning. And one of the things that stood out to me is the only thing I could really think about in that really scary moment was, statistically, people who talk about suicide out loud are less likely to follow through with it. So I immediately went home and I sat down, and it's like I don't know how, I have to ask Mandy how she was feeling, but I was like, I came in, I was like, we need to talk. And she was sitting on the couch, and I sat down next to her, and I don't know if she had any idea what I was about to tell her. And I said, I had this thought and I just need to tell you right away, because I know that's the safety plan. And as per usual, she was incredibly kind, and, you know, she was perfect. She's perfect. But I wanted to increase my odds. So I called my business partner and I told him, and I called my therapist and told her, and we got on a call the next day. And it was that experience that led me to go from dragging my heels on medication to fully embracing it. Cause I never wanted to be in a situation like that ever again, even though, and I don't want to downplay it, but I also don't want to like oversell it either. Like, it was only literally the word itself. That was it. Yeah. But that word scared me so much that it just knocked me on my ass again. And I needed to make some bigger, you know, what felt like bolder changes at the time.
I think you've been really brave coming on here and talking about everything, just being totally transparent and sharing your story. I really think, based on some conversations I've had as well, this is something that has been emerging with our Young Leaders Network, especially on our ambassador calls. People have been transparent. They've shared things that are happening in their lives. And what they've found consistently is the amount of people reaching out to them with the direct messages of, I thought I was the only one. I'm going through so many of these things as well. I think it's important that we open up the conversation. What I'd like to end this with, Braden, is usually we end every episode of Power Moves with, what is your power move? and we can laugh, but I mean, really, what is your biggest piece of advice, I think, for anyone going through this?
So that's hilarious. That's how you want to end it. Okay, fine. We'll stick to the program, Wade. I got it. No, actually, I'm happy to.
Your mental health power.
No, this is great. So through this process, with meditation and breath work and therapy and all these different therapeutic modalities and whatnot, kind of built my framework. It was kind of like my North Star, I guess 4 North Stars. And it was do things that make me feel good, do less of the things that make me feel bad. So for example, things that make me feel good, exercise, spending time with family and friends, right? Things that make me feel bad, I hate to say because I love wine and a good margarita, but like drinking alcohol, right? And I'm not going to claim that I haven't drank since, because I certainly have. But I'm mindful that doing that too much can have a negative effect on me. Hanging out with toxic people, right? Like do less of that. So do more good stuff do less bad stuff in, and then these are the 2 headier ones. Don't fight your feelings. I realize that I've lived my entire life. It's no secret. I love personal and professional development. I read all of the Think and Grow Rich books, and I do the things. I don't quite look in the mirror every day and say I'm awesome, but like I do a lot of that positive sort of pop culture, positive psychology stuff. And it has served me really, really well. But sometimes you just need to feel shitty. Sometimes you just need to cry. Sometimes you need to be grouchy. Like sometimes you just, and I feel like I'm conditioned myself that if I have a negative or a bad feeling, it's my responsibility to fix that or get over it or make it better. And so I try not to fight my feelings as much and feel them instead. And what I found was by doing that, it takes the intensity out of it. And it just feels more like I'm actually able to process it as opposed to maybe sugarcoat it or sweep it under the rug. And my last of my 4 power moves, you asked for 1, I'm giving you 4 here, man. I'm over delivering, bro.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Is let go of expectations around my recovery. Let go of expectations around my recovery, because it's easy to want to rush this process. And again, I'm an impatient person by nature. I love doing things and making things happen. And, I don't know how long I'll be on medication. I might be on medication my whole life. I don't know how long I'll identify with being a person who struggles with anxiety and depression. That might be forever. What I've learned though is you can be both a person with those things and have a high quality life. But if you're sitting down and you're causing harm to yourself emotionally because you wish you were a different way, I feel like that's a trap that I fall into a lot. And so, that's something that as that sort of 4th guiding principle, let go of that expectations. That's helped a lot.
Well, as a friend, I'm proud of you.
Thanks, brother.
The journey that you've taken. I'm excited for you in today, the fact that you were able to sort of take that next step and that you don't have expectations on how long the journey might be. But more than anything, Braden, thanks so much for doing this and sharing with agents, because I think that there's a lot of value people will take from this conversation.
Yeah, man. I appreciate the opportunity, seriously. Sorry for the sweaty hands. Hi, team. Braden Wheatcroft here. Thanks so much again to Wade and the team at Remax Canada for the opportunity to share my story with the network. I hope sharing my struggles with you and some of the things I've done to get myself back on track have been helpful, whether it's to you or someone who may be experiencing a struggle of their own right now. One of the things for sure that has helped me as I began to return to work in the summer was having a creative project to work on that I felt passionate about and connected to. And that's why I want to take a moment right now at the end of this interview to encourage you to check it out. We created an audio documentary style podcast called Reflections with Coach B. And in the first season, which is coming out in October, we do a deep dive into the power and perils of real estate partnerships. I personally put in over 100 hours into this project, and I have to tell you, it was a bit of a life raft for me as I was returning to work. So I'd love for you to check it out and let me know what your thoughts are. You can listen to Reflections with Coach B anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And thanks again for taking the time to listen to my story.